So I've been thinking about how to put this together and how to say it. If you've been listening to my channel for the last 6 months, you probably don't know my backstory, which has a lot to do with this topic. But I don't have as much room and space and privacy as I used to have, so I don't I don't have like the computer set up and all the systems that I did before. So there's a lot of interruptions in my life. I pretty much just upload videos from my phone, but there's limitations to that. There's limitations to how much data I can upload, how much time I can talk, and then of course there's the constant interruptions. The editing of ability on this is nothing like what I used to have. The audio is not nothing. I mean, everything's just limited doing this by phone. And then of course, like I'm babysitting, you might hear kids in the background. But it works still the way it is, but I might have to break these up into smaller uploads, like part one, part two, because sometimes there's just more to be said. And I suppose later on I could maybe I can find a way to put these segments together. I don't know, but for right now we'll see. But if you don't know my my origin on YouTube here back in late 2016, I had this like God experience. This very much like an NDE. It had all the um, trademark of an NDE, many of the things. A conversation with God. It was a few days after that I had asked if God would show me something about reality. I had no idea where that was going to go, if it was going to go anywhere. I just had no idea. Within a few hours of that prayer, I was blown away. I didn't go like, I didn't pray it and then just start going off looking for what God was trying to show me. It wasn't like that at all. I said it, didn't think anything of it. If I did, I wasn't expecting necessarily anything to happen. I just went about my day. And then this article popped up quite accidentally. This article popped up about somebody who, for me, had died a few years ago. And I'm not talking about Nelson Mandela. I'm talking about somebody else. But they had died. I knew they had died. I had zero doubt about this. And the article was referring to this person as being alive. So then, of course, there were all these other things. Now, if that had been the one and only incident, I might have been able to tuck that away, think, well, that was nice, that was interesting, that was curious, and went along with my life and never started a YouTube channel. I could have easily gone that route. But for me, it was a daily occurrence to come across things that would change, literally, no exaggeration. Things were changing before my eyes in real time. The first time I saw the word in the Bible, wineskins, changed to bottles, in the now, right in the moment, it changed. It wasn't like I remembered it one way and then later on it was different. The thing that I started the channel for was because almost everything around the Mandela effect was a case of false memories. And there was all these psychological terms and all that. And all of the videos were about how, well, I remember it used to be like this and I remember that. And I was experiencing things happen right then and there, not long term, memory from the past. Like in the moment, things were changing, and then other things were changing a day or two later, or a month later, a week later, that sort of thing. But those would be called flip flops. But if I were to call out all the changes over the last 5 years, it's got to be in the thousands. I mean, I still come across them on a daily basis. Reality changing. And from the time that this first started happening, I saw a symbolic message. Often I saw a symbolic message with what was being changed. Almost like biblically, we call it the writing on the wall. There's a biblical story about the hand writing on the wall. And the writing of the wall has come to mean a forewarning. And it's not that I'm trying to push fear on anybody, but I think a forewarning I mean, I have to repeat what I'm seeing, and I have to be honest about what the symbolism means to me. For example, you may remember me, talking about the Illuminati card game and their cards, and I mentioned, there's a few Mandela effects in there. There's these two where the flag, this European flag, used to have the red line centered right down the middle of the white, but in this reality we live in, it's never been that. I mean, that's never been the case. And Uncle Sam has never had red and white stripes on his hat in this reality. Another one, well, yeah, when I see the stripes, these changes with the stripes, I think by his stripes we are healed. Another one that's had stripes change is the barbershop pole. Center for Disease Control is actually now called Centers for Disease Control. So it's plural. And this is a reference, these hats are commonly a reference to Tweedledee and Tweedledum, even though Tweedledee and Tweedledum did not have these little spinners, propellers, or whatever that's on their head there. So, also, if we take a look at my flip-flops file, these are flip-flops for me. And the reason they're called flip-flops are there are all these things where the world was one way. And then after some period of time, a day, a week, a month, a year, 6 months, whatever, these things changed. They changed from what they were to this other thing. So the most recent one for me that has been a flip-flop in reality is this one. And of course, with Harry Potter, this one really symbolizes two things. The mark on the forehead, which in biblical speaking, it's, the mark of the forehead. And the lightning bolt, which is a representation of Satan descending from heaven. The fallen from heaven. Now, in this picture, it says, which one is it, in the center or the right? So for me, for a while, I was in a world where all the pictures online and everything was showing the lightning bolt was in the center of the forehead. And I was immediately struck. I was immediately saying that's wrong. It's supposed to be off to the side. It's like on the right side. This one here is where it's supposed to be. And yet I was seeing all of these images, and everywhere it was commonly understood that it was in the center of the forehead. And the residual at the time was that it was at the right. So I'm very certain about this because this is one that bothered me. Well, not bothered, that's not a good word, but it stood out because I was very familiar with these movies, having kids that were growing up during this time. I was very certain of where this lightning bolt was supposed to be. There was even some residual of it, but it was very clear in all the research I was coming up with. It was clear that the movies were demonstrating this lightning bolt in the center of his forehead. So then the other day I came across an image, and I was like, look at that. It's back to the original location. This for me is a reality that is flip-flop. Now I have sympathy for people who say we're living in some sort of matrix computer and people that somehow things are being edited, or a hologram, or somehow timelines, realities are blending and merging somehow. I sympathize because I honestly can't understand how this works, but all I know for certain is this thing has gone back to being off to the side rather than the very center of his forehead. This is for me a flip-flop. Another flip-flop is I lived in a world where this guy was saying, he was just saying to Harry, you're a wizard, or because you're a wizard. There was no Harry at the end of it. And at that time, I was like, well, that's a change. This is like very clear to me. He's supposed to say, you're a wizard, Harry. That's, and I talked about it with people. I said this is how it's supposed to be, and then one day I noticed, look, the meme comes up and it says you're a wizard, Harry, and that's apparently the way it is now. That's what he actually says in the movie. I played the clip. I had to go and check it for myself again, but I played the clip the previous time, and he didn't say it. I've witnessed this clip both ways, and for all the people that say, well, there's just different ways that the movie was made and stuff like that, I can tell you I've investigated these things enough to find out that's not the case. I mean, well, I should say retroactively, reality can get altered into where that all of a sudden becomes okay. I mean, it gets very complicated. So yeah, that's quite possible too. All these things that have changed for me, I I know it's a little hard. It's a little much. And ever since these changes in reality and they were popping up and symbolizing things to me, many of the things they were symbolizing were about Jesus and about God and about Satan and about the end times, or about separation of the wheat and the tares, the separation that it's hard to explain, but all of these things were like pointing to be prepared, be wheat, don't be a tare. And that means your life should have substance. Your life should have fruit, meaning it has worth. It should not be like a tare, which is worthless. It should not be an empty life that's not worth anything to anybody. You should have in your heart this guiding rule of how to live and how you ought to be. And that rule of oughts is what you should be following, not the ought nots. Of course, everybody seems to have the freedom to choose the path they want to take, but there seems to be a division between those who will choose this wheat path versus the tare path. That is the message, the handwriting on the wall that I was sensing in these changes. And when I say the Bible has changed, I don't mean just the online version of the Bible. I mean taking the physical Bible that's been in your family for 100 years and opening up to a verse that you've memorized and known your whole life, and voila, the thing no longer says that. It's absolutely amazing. And I would say terrifying, but it's not to me. When all these things started to happen, for me it wasn't terrifying. It was like, wow, I felt blessed that God would even allow me to see such things. I mean, and I felt great peace about all these things. Even if we are moving into a time that is getting closer and closer to some upheavals and a lot of things being revealed about the world, and even if we are hitting these times that are considered scary, and people do need to be warned, but I feel the need to talk about it just because God has profoundly dropped this information on me, this revelation on me, this truth on me. And yes, it does bother me that they are still rolling out, even though there's this distraction of war, they are still rolling out. And when I say they, I mean the global elitist. They are still rolling out the implementation of a mark of control, a tracking ID, emerging with the quantum computers, the AI, the technology. They are still pushing the legislation of global governance. It is still, that machine is still coming on strong. And I don't know how much time we have left before each and every one of us is going to have to make a tough decision about whether or not we are going to accept this technology into our bodies, which might be the yielding of our soul even. I mean, that's biblically, that's what it is. That's how, it's not just a yielding of your control over your own body. It is a yielding of your soul, a capturing of your soul. I can't stress enough that if the Bible's warning you that this day is going to come 2,000 years ago, and it's this serious, that it might be worth looking into and examining this whole wheat versus tares thing. I mean, the Mandela effect for me is not a case of mistaken memories. It is a supernatural, spiritual, magical, insane beyond all belief. I mean, something I never would have thought I would have seen. This is not something that I would regularly look for. Before this day occurred and before all this stuff happened to me, I was just working in corporate America, managing teams, doing, my biggest concern was how to move that needle of profits up. I mean, it was, my world did not think about these things, even though I did sense the control of the banking system and the elitism, and I understood. I had a gaining knowledge of that, but this right here, this is completely beyond what I expected. But here we are. And now this one I saw, the reason I'm pointing out this verse here today, it's a verse in First Thessalonians. And I was just thinking about how the mainstream media, the politicians, the world, when I say they, I mean the globalist, they have been pushing the theme of peace and safety on us in order to control us more and more and more. So we've been in the whole safety zone where you're wearing facial coverings and things like that because you're so afraid of dying. Safety, safety, safety. We're always doing things to conform and lose control and rights over ourselves in the name of safety. And that's been the mantra of what they have been doing. And then now the next thing is going to be in the name of peace. And the question here is, what word do you remember when they blank peace and safety? This is a biblical verse. It's a well-known biblical verse. It should instantly come to you. When they, peace and safety. These are the type of Mandela effects and Bible changes I've seen so many times. In every single version of the Bible, this word that I used to know was there, that I used to say instantly, that word is now gone. In every version, it is gone. And it's interesting. It's interesting as to what the implication is beyond the word. It's also interesting as the whole verse and what the verse is saying, because this peace and safety event is supposed to be something you recognize before the judgment and the destruction that is coming to which these globalists, these ones who they've set themselves against God, their destruction is near or nigh. This is a well-known verse. People have quoted it so many times, and yet the word that they've said over and over and over, it is not in any version of the Bible. This is how the Mandela effect works. So my next upload, I'm going to do part 2 on this, and I'm just going to go into something that I refer to as residual or past evidence that this verse used to say this. And this is me, I guess this is my feeble attempt to convince anybody or prove that, yes, the Bible has changed. However, I already know that's futile because everybody will just say, I mean, they'll come up with a reason. I'm certain of that. If you are not meant to see this for what's really happening, you will come up with a reason why what I'm saying to you is ludicrous, and why all of these people who are citing it the way I remembered it to be, the way I knew it to be, well, there'll be an explanation for that. And yet, when I say, well, I've seen other verses change while I'm looking at them, then you would say, I need a psychiatrist and I need to be on medication. You would write me off. You'd call me crazy. I understand that me even explaining this to people is futile. But the purpose is, these Mandela effects, I feel, are writing on the wall. And when you see it in a verse like this, a verse that is specifically talking about the end times, an event that's been prophesied in the Bible. The book of Daniel goes back 2,500 years. Revelations, another Mandela effect, Revelations goes back 2,000 years. It's just absolutely fascinating. And if I could just live my life, I mean, I thought I'd gotten past this because I haven't talked about Mandela effects yet. I see them in my daily life all the time. They pop up, and I'll just say, yeah, that's one to change. This one changes. They pop up all the time. So I think Harry Potter's lightning bolt, that kind of, I was like, man, I've got to share some of this. And then this verse today, which is tied into what, I was just thinking about this verse today because this is exactly what's happening. They are pushing the theme of peace and safety through all the news and all their platforms and all their propaganda systems. They want the world, they want you to cry. Oh, there, I said it. They want you to cry for peace and safety. This is what they want. And how do you get peace and safety other than to give them all of your control, sovereignty of your country, sovereignty of your body, sovereignty of everything? They need to put that thing right inside your brain, right inside your body, and they need to capture you. Okay, my next upload here is going to be showing the residual evidence for what this thing was for me. And no, it doesn't say that anymore in any version of any Bible.